That's what I thought.
Oh, yes. Thank you. So I always introduce people.
Great.
Is there anything special you want me to say this afternoon? You're also president of Black?
The past president.
That's president. Okay.
Snows at the Ohio-Michigan border.
Black is the
Not
conference.
Black is
Solar is the
Solar
group that
is
puts
the
it on.
Society for
Speak
Learning
quickly.
Analytics Research. Black is Learning Analytics and Knowledge. Yeah, that's our conference.
Okay, yeah. I don't know.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I always
All right, well, thank you all for coming out today. If you haven't already signed the form, please do before you leave. It's how we justify paying for the food that will be coming after the seminar. And I would like to introduce Stephanie Teasley. She is from our School of Information as well as the past president of Solar.
Thank you. Thanks for coming over here today to hear about my talk. I have some colleagues in the room here who helped with the project. Stuart Karabinick is over here, and Jesse Eichholt is visiting us from Central Michigan, helping us with some of the newer data analysis and stuff. So I'm glad to have them here in the room as well. Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about today are student dashboards, as the title suggested, and tell you a little bit about the one that we developed and why we developed it and what we've learned from using it so far. But first, I wanted to do a little learning analytics basics. So who knows, is familiar with learning analytics besides Perry?
No one would admit it.
No, kind of a little bit. Anybody, how about your table? Learning analytics mean anything to you? Well, I'm going to give you a really short primer on that because I think it helps to make sense of what we're doing a bit and give a context for it. So I always like to start with this definition about what learning analytics is about. And so really it's about data from learners. And I like this definition because we talk about the context in which they're learners. So are they residential students? Are they online students? Are they at R1 institutions like ours, community colleges? Much of the research in learning analytics is being done in higher education, less in K-12, although that is changing a bit. But the point of learning analytics is to understand and optimize learning and the environments in which learning occurs. So the goals for this research is always is an applied goal, right? We want to take what we've learned and try to make a difference in the student learning experience, whether we're working with instructors or students. But today I'm going to primarily be talking about students. SOLAR is the academic society. So that stands for Society of Learning Analytics Research. Our annual conference is LAC, Learning Analytics and Knowledge, and we're having our 10th conference next month in Frankfurt, Germany. So we're 10 years old as a field in terms, if you want to measure that there's a field by the fact that there's been a conference about it. Solar as a community, a research community, sort of formed around the second of the conferences and has really grown tremendously over these 10 years. We typically have over 400, 450 people attend the conference, and it's truly an international group. It's one of the most international academic societies that I belong to. There's a lot of learning analytics work going on in the US, the UK, and Australia, but also certainly all over the globe. And so when we go to the LAC conference, it's exciting to see researchers from lots of different countries there. And the University of Michigan is an institutional member of SOLAR. So what that means is you're all automatically get a free membership. So if you want to be a member of SOLAR, sign up as an individual member. I can give you the secret code that waives the fee. And you need to be a member to get this special conference rate for our conference, and also we have a summer institute. So if I get you excited about what you're doing here, I can send you to the SOLAR website to look at this summer institute, which will happen on the NYU campus in New York this summer in June. And then you could register at the member rate too, because you have a UMich address. Okay, so when we talk about learning analytics, I like to think about it as data science for education. Because a lot of the techniques and things that we do are definitely data science oriented. And we've been doing research on education for a long time, as you know. But why is learning analytics as a field happening now? What's changed? And I think it's really these three things. One is we know a lot more about learning. So when I was a grad student, that was before there was a field called learning sciences. We knew about cognitive science and education, of course, but the learning sciences certainly also advanced what we know about learning and environments for learning. And then this explosion of online technology platforms, I mean, just the sheer ubiquity of learning management systems on campus, right? I mean, think about, can you even remember before we had C tools, much less Canvas, right? So, and all the other kinds of tools that we use in service of helping our students learn. So there's all of that, and then as a consequence of all those, of course, we've got new forms of data about learning. So, for example, my dissertation was pairs of kids sitting in front of very carefully constructed learning environment, and I videotaped them and I collected the data from the computer, and then I did a lot of qualitative coding and analysis, and of course then I could only do, I think I had 40 pairs of students in my study, and it still, took me a long time. Now, with this new forms of data and these technology platforms, I don't have to worry about a sample or a representative sample or my sample size, because for us, for this project, every single student on our campus is potentially in my sample, right? Every single grad student, undergrad, every course taught on this campus is potentially available in my sample. So that makes it really exciting, both in terms of scale, but also the form of data that I get is a more microscopic level of learning, evidence about learning than I'd ever been analyzing before I started doing learning analytics research. So, and when I talk about the data that's available, I like to think about that it gives us both evidence of the process of learning as well as the products of learning, because we have these digital traces of all the things that students are doing, as well, including sensor data, library use, and so forth, as well as discussion posts, blogs, tweets. The advances in natural language processing is also allowing us to automate our analysis of those textual products of learning as well. So I think it's a really exciting time to be an educational data scientist. Now, when I talk about this, there's a lot of ways, entry points that people can be into this field, and I certainly don't know anyone who represents all these skills. One of the things I also like about learning analytics is it's a real collaborative community, and you often see jointly authored papers where people are co-authoring and working on projects together because they don't have all this expertise. And our project, I'll tell you about specifically some of the people that I involved to try to represent this breadth of what I think is necessary to do a really good, rich learning analytics project. In case you didn't know, right? So where does all this data that I'm talking about live? Well, it primarily lives here in our student data warehouse. And we're really, really lucky at Michigan that we've had for a long time an integrated student data warehouse. When I first started doing research on learning analytics on this campus was before the first learning analytics conference. We weren't even calling it learning analytics, but I was trying to figure out what was going on with C tools and who was using it and how are they using it. And then I wanted to know more about the users, and so I would knock on the door of the admissions people and say, can I have your data about the students, blah, blah, and they'd say, who are you? Why do you want that? And basically data used to be in silos. And about the time I started doing this work, for reasons that don't have anything to do with me, our ITS decided we needed an integrated student data warehouse. So you don't have to go knocking on doors, you don't have to get separate permissions anymore. Things live in the same place. And we now have somebody over at ITS who's called a data concierge. So you reach out to him when you want data pulled, and they help you determine the data. And if you didn't really know, here's all the things that we can know about our students on this campus that live somewhere in the student data warehouse. I don't know, do you find this shocking, or you're like, yeah, of course? Yeah. The one that, did you anyone see the story about Syracuse using phone Wi-Fi data to track student location? We have that data on our campus as well. We are not using that data in our project in any way, and there are some hoops you have to go through to use that data. And essentially, the university won't let people use this if it's identified data, so with the student name linked to it. The rest of these things are identified data. So when we tap into them for learning analytics research, we need to be identified. We need to know who the students are, because we're going to line up different records for each student. Then we anonymize it, of course, but we do need to know who they are. And one of the ways that we do this on our campus too is there's this learning analytics data architecture called LARC, which is another place where a lot of the student information system data lives. So not Canvas, not the technology use data, but all the data about students live here, and you can make data requests to this service with the right, permission and levels of control and that kind of thing. But this is another advantage we have at Michigan, besides integrated data warehouse, is we actually have a structure for researchers to tap into the student information system data in a way that other universities, it's not happening there. I think the comment that I get most often when I talk about what we're doing here at Michigan from people elsewhere in the US, but also outside the US is, oh my God, how do you get to do that? Who lets you do that? And followed very quickly by, you're gonna get so sued. And fortunately, our Office of the General Counsel are atypical for lawyers. They're not worried about they're not risk averse, is what I'm trying to say, and they've already cleared that doing this kind of work here on our campus is not a FERPA violation. And as long as we take the appropriate levels of protection for student privacy, use of the data, that there's no reason that we can't do this. And certainly Perry Sampson here is someone who also collects a lot of data about his students and also benefits.
I've had as much luck with the lawyers as you have.
You've involved lawyers in Canada, though. We keep it all here, right? Anyway. So it is, I do want to say up front that without a lot of detail, I'm happy to answer those questions later, but we do think very carefully about student privacy, protecting their data, using it appropriately, and so forth. But the reason why our Office of the General Counsel doesn't see this as a FERPA violation is because all the research that we're doing here is to benefit our students. And so FERPA allows you to use identified student data for business reasons to know. Well, our business is educating students, so we're using that data to help us better educate our students. A quick note about the kind of research method that I like to use and I think is relatively typical in the learning analytics world. This is a modified view of this from our colleague over in the Health Learning Systems Department, Chuck Friedman and his colleagues. But the point I want to make is that there's this iterative design cycle for building these kinds of systems and testing them. So we start with data to knowledge, right? We have data and we want to learn something from the data. But then we want to take what we've learned and turn it into practice. We want to do something with it. We want to have a change or an effect on the students in the classroom and so forth. But then we're not done, because then once we've put it into practice, we're generating data and the use in practice, and we use that data then to go back and revise our theories of knowledge. And this is certainly the iterative cycle that we've been through in building the dashboard that I'm going to tell you about, because each time we've rolled it out on a new set of classes, then we have data that I'm going to show you an example of that helps us learn something about the dashboard and helps us make design changes with the dashboard, get a better sense of who it's working for, what kind of classes it works best, and so forth. We feed that back into the system and go through it all again. So I'm a big fan of this iterative cycle. I'm going to talk about dashboards today, but there are lots of potential applications that you can do with learning analytics data. So if building a dashboard isn't your thing, some of these will be familiar to you. I'm sure most people think about or know, have heard about systems that make predictions about student success, like the MOOC people like to talk about, oh, I can know by the third week of the term or the third week of the course whether the student's going to stay in the course and what grade they're going to get and so forth. So people do like to build prediction models. I've been involved in that a little bit, but mostly because I want to create opportunities for intervention. So I'm more interested in when the prediction model is wrong because of the intervention that we've inserted in, than just proving whether my prediction model was really good, right? And so there are a number of different things that you can do with this data, and the reference here is a whole list of other things. So here on campus, in my own personal view of learning analytics, the goal for them then is to learn from every student. So every student on our campus who takes a class here gives us an opportunity to look at data about how learning happens, right? And we should be able to learn from every student. And so I've already talked about, we have this integrated data ecosystem where it lives. We have what's then really considered a pretty unique test bed for looking at student learning. And as I said, we protect privacy. And the other thing we're able to do then is demonstrate both the value of what we're building, but also the scalability of it. And I'm going to talk about the potential scalability of this dashboard in a minute. So I had my artistic son create this little image for us. What I'm really looking for with learning analytics is not treating our campus like a factory, where students come in, we treat them all the same, they come out, we assume they're all sort of the same in many ways, but how can we change the student's experience here that really personalizes the experience because learners are not all the same. Having said that, I think you know if you taught here that we do have a pretty homogeneous population, right? So one of the things looking forward is I don't assume that everything we learn from the University of Michigan students is going to apply perfectly to students on other campuses, especially other campuses that are very different than ours or draw from a different student population than ours. But it's a great place to start because of all the advantages that we have and the resources we have. So I really feel like we kind of have an obligation to learn as much as we can here because we can, and then take it to other campuses, other places where maybe the institutions don't have the same capacity to do this kind of research that we can do here. Okay, so any questions before I go to the dashboard, or any comments about learning analytics in general or the data we have here at Michigan? No? Okay.
Well,
Alright.
I do.
Yeah.
What's the granularity of the data? So you say Canvas, for example.
Yeah.
And I've gotten data, this clickstream stuff from Canvas before. Is
Right.
that what you're dealing with?
Yeah.
Or?
Yes. Right now, what we're looking at is the clickstream data from the dashboard, because I don't know how many of you know what Unison is. I know that Perry knows. Unison is this consortium of schools that Michigan belongs to. We all use Canvas, and Unison members are creating a data cloud, and it's called a unified data platform because the idea is every school that's a Unison member will format their data the same, structure it the same, and put it in the cloud, which then gives us the opportunity to do what I was talking about before. We could do comparisons across schools. So the Canvas data lives in the cloud, and the dashboard data lives in the cloud. But I will say as a disclaimer, Perry, what we haven't yet done, because the ITS people haven't quite made it work right, our dashboard data sits in one file and the Canvas data sits in another. And we haven't yet successfully integrated them. So when I talk about use data, I have the click data from the dashboard. What I can't tell you is exactly what the student does when they leave the dashboard, or what they were doing right before they came back to the dashboard. That's a goal that we have. And I haven't looked at the fall data yet to know whether we've conquered that, whether we can line those up. It sounds easy, but for some technical reason we discovered last winter, it couldn't happen without a lot of data wrangling. So we set it aside for now. Yes?
Is the dashboard is just something that sits on top of Canvas?
It does.
Okay.
Yep,
It's-
it pulls
but-
all the data from Canvas.
Okay.
And instructors do not have to do anything.
And it's totally separate from eCoach, not related?
Yep.
Okay.
Totally separate from eCoach and all the other fun tools that other faculty are developing here.
And just to
Yes,
follow up,
please.
you had some other silos on your map, like Kaltura. Is that then?
Yep, got it.
Hmm?
Yep.
Yeah, so when you're accessing that data, are you able to break it down, say, per day? I mean, if I'm interested to see how patterns are changing per day, is that a possibility?
What we have, and you'll see the view, is if they go to the video, the Kaltura video, then it's that click is stored in our data system. We don't then get all the, how long did they watch it, how many stop starts did they did. That data also exists. And again, it would be a matter of triangulating that data or moving that particular use data. But basically, any tool we're using on this campus that this caliper, right, can be integrated in the Unison data platform and therefore accessible to us for analysis.
So it's got timestamps built in?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yep. That's down in the weeds question, sorry, but, okay. So what have we built? And remember I told you that list of different kinds of expertise. What we have here is a collaborative project, I'm happy to say, with the School of Information. So myself and one of my faculty colleagues, Matt Kay, who is an expert in data visualization. We have my colleague, Stuart Karabinick, who's from the School of Education, who's been studying student motivation and self-regulated learning for his whole career. And then we partnered with the ITS teaching and learning team, who are essentially our architects, our system architects, because what we didn't want to have happen is we would envision a dashboard, dream it up, throw it over the wall at them, and let us tell us, no, we can't pull data that does that. And so we worked very carefully with them in a very close iterative sense of saying, this is how we want it to look, this is the data we want represented, how does it live in the data stream, what can we make use of it, how can we import it to make a view that looks like how we want to make it look. So we had these goals for the project. The top level was, of course, to make these visualizations that we thought would help students. We wanted to have a theoretical foundation for designing it. Common criticism, a lot of learning analytics systems is there's no real learning theory underneath them for why they should work that way and what benefits they might have for students. We want to give it to students in real time so they can reflect on what they're doing in the moment, so not waiting until the end of the term to try to figure out why they got the grade they got. And with the hope then, of course, that we would allow the students then to be changing their behaviors and having certain realizations during the term that maybe would help them have a better learning outcome. And this bottom one was the technical goal, because we have this unified data platform here at Michigan. Part of the technical goal for this project was to utilize that, because if we can successfully do that, then any school that's a Unison school that is putting their data in the cloud can use this same dashboard. And we have a number of other Unison schools that are already beginning to pilot it, as well as a couple other schools that are Canvas users who are going to figure out for themselves how to pull the data directly from Canvas without going through the Unison cloud first. So those were the things that we had in mind when we started this project. And I came to dashboards a long time ago. Have any of you heard of Student Explorer, the dashboard for academic advisors? I think engineering uses it a lot, actually. So a long time ago, like 10 years ago or more, the academic advisors from the MSTEM academies came and said, we're finding out too late when our students are doing poorly, even though we're very high touch in these programs. Is there a way that you can tap into the then C-Tools data to give us kind of the early warning system, like so when students are in trouble? And so we did, we built that, and now it's scaled and people on campus use it. I think I've heard engineering uses it a lot. Also interestingly, the athletic campus uses it a lot because they need to keep those athletes eligible. And then there are other places on campus. But at that time, we built the dashboard for academic advisors for two primary reasons. One, they asked us to. We thought it was an interesting application for learning analytics. And two, because I was confident that if we built this dashboard, that they would have the expertise both to understand the data and to know what to do with it, right? So to be able to say to a student, because I can see you're doing poorly on the homework, you need to go to this learning resource on campus, and there are very, very many. Or they could look at the pattern of the student's performance on various ways and say, you need this resource to help you. So, but in the time after we built that and it rolled out, and I don't really study its use anymore, student-facing dashboards have become quite popular, and they were one of the first systems that you were seeing built with learning analytics type data. And in the last few years, they're really becoming ubiquitous in learning management systems. Like if we were a Blackboard school, there's a student-facing dashboard in Blackboard, and as well as a number of other commercial products. And basically, they want students to monitor their progress, and typically they're comparing their performance against other students. As I said, there's very little theoretical underpinning for most dashboards, but if there is one articulated, it is the one for motivation and self-regulation, which is the one that we intend to support. So that's, we figured we should build a good one, and there isn't one in Canvas, and we had all this expertise on campus. It seemed like a really good idea. The research to date, at the time we started building this, showed that there really was an opportunity space for a student-facing dashboard, because there are a lot of problems with the existing dashboards and the research reports on those existing dashboards. And so we tried to not make these same mistakes, which I think, having told you who's on our team and how we're working, I think these make sense, or will make more sense when I tell you exactly what our dashboard looks like. One of the questions that we can ask about student performance dashboards is what information are we going to give to students, and how can we design them so that they're doing what we hope that they do, and we're not dissuading them or creating a condition for which they don't have to take personal responsibility for their learning. So a term I like that I heard is helicopter analytics. So you take those helicopter parents who got their kids into Michigan, and then they come here. Do we want to be helicopter academics, right? Do we want to be saying things to them like, you have a test coming up, have you studied for it yet? Or when is that paper due? How much do you have done? You can imagine the things that the stereotype for helicopter parents do are also some of the kinds of things that other systems do. Now, I'm not knocking those systems. eCoach gives a lot of good advice to students. Not accusing them of being helicopter analytics. I'm just saying for our project, what we tried to do was to put as much of the agency and responsibility for what they get out of using our system on the student, right? And you'll see a bit about how we're doing that. Okay, so finally to the meat. This is what we built, 3 views, and I'm going to show you in depth what each one looks like in its current form. As we said, it appears as if it's in Canvas or looks like a Canvas tool. So you know in Canvas there are tools that come along the side of the website. Not instructors have all these tools, some have more. But when we turn on the dashboard, this My Learning Analytics gets inserted in the tool list. And we have our groovy little icon that also appears in relevant places on Canvas pages that also is a click away the students can get to My Learning Analytics. So if this is on their website, they click on this, they get the slide I showed you before with the 3 little thumbnail views, can click on that view to go right to it. Or they can click on the view from inside a couple of the pages that these reference. That will be clear here. Okay, so the first one is this resources access page, and this is what I was talking about, so what we can look at, or give the students to look at. So what is here is a list of everything that the instructor has put in the resources folder. This says you're reviewing files data. There's also, if there are lectures, videos in there, there's another box here that lets you add the video views too. And what it does is, if it is blue, the student has clicked on it at least once. If it is gray, the student has not clicked on it. And it also shows the student what % of the students in that class has done so. So this first one that they've read, everyone in the class has read that. Here's 2 things that they have not yet read that 84% of the class has already read at this point in time. And if they're thinking, oh crap, what is that? They can go over here and click on it, and it takes them right to the document. So it takes them out of the dashboard into Canvas to that document. There are a few things that they can do here to modify this view. So we wanted, as I said, to give students agency, but also not totally make a one-size-fits-all view. So one of the things we spend a lot of time thinking about is students often have a reference point for themselves. They have aspirations or goals for the course. They know it's a course that they want to do really, really well in because it's their major and it's, you know, a course that they're really think getting an A is important for them. Maybe it's a course that they're a senior and they haven't yet taken this distribution and they just need to pass this class. So maybe all they really care about is, please God, just let me at least get a C or B- in this class. So what we allow them to do here is to change the reference point. So the default is this shows them what everybody in class is in aggregate, where they stand. This, you could say, show me the students who have between 90 and 100% of the points in this class so far. Show me what those students are reading, because that I want to end up in that 90 to 100% category, or 80 to 90, or 70 to 80. So the students can pick who they want to reference themselves to and make sure, am I keeping up with the people that I want to make sure that I'm like? The other thing they can control here is the slider for the time that they're looking at. So it always opens on the current week of the term and goes 2 weeks back. Maybe as the term goes on, you're slammed and you just want to know, what did everybody read last week? So you could just make it show you 1 week, or you might be studying for the midterm and you want to make sure you've read everything you're supposed to have read up to that point. So you might open it at 8 and slide it all the way back to 1. And then the list will be complete that way. And you can scroll up and down here to see as many items as you want to see. The other thing it does, I forgot to mention, is if you have clicked on it and read it, you hover over the blue bar and it shows you when you opened it, how many times you opened it, to sort of give you a little reminder there, like, okay, you don't remember it, but you opened it 3 times. So maybe you kept opening it, but you never did what you were supposed to do, or you didn't actually read it, or you printed it and put it aside and you still haven't read it. So the whole point of this view then is really for students to be monitoring their progress and checking, am I keeping up with what I'm supposed to be doing? And in particular, am I keeping up with the people that I want to be measuring myself with?
That's an interesting question.
Yes.
You said what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I can imagine in my class, I've got a lot of stuff in the resources, and it's not obvious that all of it is what students are supposed to be doing. So how do they know relative to this what they're supposed to be doing?
Well, I think there is an implicit assumption if you put it on the website, it has some value to the students. They may disagree with that. But this also tells them really like, so is anybody else looking at it? And maybe if 84% of the students have looked at it, I think that sends a signal that they might want to look at it. They can then and decide, oh, that was a waste of my time or not. But at least they're getting a sense of what's everybody else doing and is that something I need to be doing as well? Yes.
That's a good question. Because I'm looking at this and I'm wondering if it's viewed. So many students viewed it. Does it also capture how much time and what? Okay, so that's really.
No, that could be in the Canvas data. And also clicking on it doesn't mean they've actually done anything with it, as I suggested earlier.
So if you say, oh, look at all the people who are in this grade range.
Yeah.
Oh, they all clicked on it. What did they do with it? Did they read it? So that's where I'm wondering the value of.
Yeah, well, you can imagine students also starting to game the system. Like if this reported to the instructor, you might want to go through and click on everything so the instructor could know that you clicked on it. We don't report this to the instructor. Although maybe when the term is over, if you're an instructor like Perry that has a lot of stuff in there, you could ask us, by the end of the term, what % of students in the class have touched each of the things that I put up in resources? And can we know something about which students, like show me all the ones that the A students touched or the B students touched. So we could give feedback to instructors in that way that may help them with the subsequent course design. But during the term, we promise the students that this is only for their use and we do not share this data with the faculty. And the only way to see this view is to be a student and to see what you've opened or touched or not touched. No individual instructor can say, what has Perry read? Show me by week 6, what's Perry been reading? Yes?
As a student, I would think the better value to me would be, was it of value to other students?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of them clicked it, but is there a way they could then say, yeah, boy, this is great, this is of value?
Yep.
And that'd be extra information of.
Yes, that is something we've talked about embedding in the design, where you could have the student, if they click and open it, have a little pop-up that asks them that, and that's definitely a great idea for subsequent versions of this. But then you're still getting student opinion, you're still getting student rating, but it could make this more valuable in terms of saying, okay, if I open this like everybody else, is it really worth it? Yes?
I have a question. I'm struggling to form it. So even with the comment that was just made, no matter what feature that you put in, you're always going to deal with validity issues.
Sure.
You're always going to deal with it because somebody can say, I'm just trying to blow through this. I know they're going to ask me this question. It was a 3. What does that 3 out of 5 stars in terms of how important it was to me actually mean, right?
Yeah.
And I guess the second thing I'm kind of finding is the students back in 2004 when I was kind of going around the campus and looking at this type of stuff, the resources accessed were all in different systems. Some of it was on like pen and paper, some of it was Excel. I don't know what the campus is, what it looks like now, but from when someone uses CAPS to if someone goes to the Science Learning Center to if somebody goes to Sweetland, I don't know if they're all using similar or linked systems. So you're almost kind of losing the fidelity of what students are doing outside of accessing Canvas, and that might matter, especially if you're talking about predictive analytics.
We got the same comment from the academic advisor dashboard. They don't know when they tell the student, you need to go do this. They don't necessarily know whether the student does indeed go do it, right? And all we can know here is, and you'll see we have some data, we know which ones they've clicked on or not, and then we want to know, well, when did they do that? How many times did they do that? What does that use look like in the dashboard? And then we're, making an inference about what role or what value that played for the student. but, you know, it's better than no data.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess another
Yeah.
thing, just to add on to
Yeah.
that, these grades that the students are able to see, you know, so many students have this A and they're clicking on these things, and the B students are clicking on it too. But there's more going on there, because I can tell you, if my class, if I have 40 students and I'm working with them for month after month, I know that the students who come to my office hours, regardless of what they click online, and they have face-to-face communication and we go through line by line in their homework,
That's right.
they're going to do very well. And they might not, you know, it might be misleading for someone who feels like, oh, I have to keep up, I only have a C, there's no data that says, go to office hours, how many times did you go?
Not in our system, no. And I think it's pretty well documented in the literature that we know that going to office hours is a good thing.
Yeah.
And we're not intending this to replace that.
Yeah.
However, you think about a large class, students don't necessarily know how to know if they're, you know, keeping up, right? Or know that they're supposed to be going in and using these resources. So really, this is one view of 3. It isn't intended to solve every problem, but is intended to help students have a better sense of their own progress and to be thinking about, what do I need to be doing? What else could I be doing because other people are doing it? The other thing I didn't say, the reason, although the word grade does appear here, I told you these are percentages. We tried it, there's no grades anywhere on this. There's only percentages and points. And because we know Michigan students are obsessed with grades, right? Lots of students are. We try not to tell them what grade they're getting, but what percent of the points they're earning, because that's a more mastery approach than a performance approach. Whether students get that distinction or not is an open question, but especially because we don't know how instructors grade, right? Some syllabus will tell you up front you need X% of the points to get an A, B, or C. The students know that then. Some instructors don't determine that till the course is done and they draw the distribution and make the cutoff. So when we designed this system, one of our goals too was to make it what I call course agnostic. So we can't ask instructors to change their pedagogy to use our dashboard. So we have to make the dashboard be sort of the most common denominator that lets the most number of classes use it without us having to sit down with an instructor and say, you have to structure your course this way, you have to put this in, and the points have to look like this, and you have to set your grades like that, because there's no way that's happening on this campus.
But couldn't they panic? So say that in one class, I have 80%, in another class I have 40%, but in that 40% class, I could actually be setting the curve, I could be.
Okay, so hold that thought, okay?
Please.
Right, okay, so.
It makes me nervous.
I know, and people are nervous about these dashboards, but part of our project is, should we be? And who should we be nervous for? And is it, who's being affected by the use? So hold on to those thoughts. This is the other view I wanted to show you. The second view is our assignment planning view. Again, here it's really overt planning. You should be planning. You should be thinking ahead. You should be thinking about what's coming up, when it's coming up, and also we show them what they already know. It's in the syllabus and on the assignments page, but what percent of their grade is it worth? So up here across the top is a progress bar. So if it's blue, it's been graded. These are individual items, graded items. And it shows them, at that point in time, what's the maximum possible that they can earn in this class. So here it's early in the term, and this student clearly lost only 1 or 2 points, if you will, on these assignments. Now, as the term goes on and more of these things get graded, this, of course, assuming they're not grade A, perfect, getting 100%, this starts to ooch down a little bit, and it lets students begin to think about, well, if I don't want my grade to go below 95% or 90%, then I know what I have to do. I really gotta, work hard on these other things and do the best I can, or this max possible line is gonna start to move down a little bit. Or a lot, depending on how you do. Another customizable thing here is we know that students have different priorities at different points in the term, and there are points in the term when they're getting slammed at all sides. So maybe they just want to say, I want to make sure I don't miss anything that's more than 10% of grade. So you can adjust this. The default is it shows you everything that's coming up, but you can adjust it to say, show me everything that's 10% or more, or 20% more. Which doesn't mean that the students shouldn't do the other assignments, but again, students are making choices about how to allocate their time and effort, and they may want to make sure I don't miss anything big. And so that's what this view is intended to show them. Yep,
Does
go ahead.
it grab this information from the Canvas gradebook or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it comes right out of the Canvas gradebook, and until it's graded, these stay gray. Yes?
Do academic advisors have access to this type of data?
Not this, if they're using the Student Explorer, the data is there in a different form for them, where it actually then codes red, yellow, or green, how far away from the class median that student is. So if they're really missing the mark or they're teetering on the edge of getting themselves in trouble, it's a different view, it's a different system for academic advisors. There was another question.
Well, I just said, I mean, some people are trying out GradeCraft, for example, where you have different weightings, and Canvas can't cope with different weightings for different students, so you just.
Right, so there are, when I said we try to make it course agnostic, we can't be 100% successful. So if you're a course that has a lot of dropped, you get, here's 5, you get the top 4, and here's 3 extra credit assignments and so forth. All we can do is, if the instructor has noted that in the gradebook, in the algorithm for the gradebook, when this pop-up happens, let's see. So if you hover over a blue one, you get reminded what it was, when it was due, what grade they got, what was the total possible, and the average grade for the class and what percent it was. So if something in the gradebook says one of these can be dropped, then a little sentence will appear underneath here reminding the student that not to panic about this max possible, because if they bombed on something and it's one of those, you get to drop one of these, they can sort of mentally recalculate, okay, so things are not as bad as I thought they were, because by the time I take these other things and do better, I'll get to drop that one and the max possible actually may move up. So we can accommodate that when the instructor has specified it in the gradebook. There's no way this system would work for a class like GradeCraft, and there are a few other classes like that, but again, not everybody's using GradeCraft, and that's a pretty big ask for instructors to redesign their course to use it. And the other thing we tell students about this system is, we point out to them they have the syllabus, that's their ultimate authority, the instructor is their ultimate authority, that they know more about the course than the dashboard does. So they need to be thinking about, if something looks wonky here, what does it mean, why? And to refer to the syllabus or talk to the instructor about that, and students will. Okay, the last view is the canonical view. Every dashboard's gotta have one because students love this view. Every dashboard that you can read results on, students want this grade distribution view. So this is how they know where they are in relation to what everybody else in the course is doing at that particular point in time. We've added this checkbox here because we have gotten feedback from students that said, I want to see the distribution, but I don't want it in my face where I am. I know what my grade is. So they can check this box and take this yellow line off of there. But basically what it does is it shows them these facts about their grade to date, how many students are in there, and what their grade percentage is at this point in time. But unlike other systems, we're not labeling these. These are the A's, these are the B's, these are the C's. And we refer to them, again, as percentage points, not as grades.
I want to ask Stuart, since he's in the room here. when you said this is going to be based on learning theory.
Yeah.
I've heard theories that now a student, I'm the student who's got the 67. I look at this and go, I'm out of here. You know, it's not motivating, it's like the anti-motivation. So how does this support the theory? Stuart?
Well, that's a good question, and some theories would say that you don't want to show this at all.
Yeah.
And yeah, if we look at the data so far, students really like this view.
Yeah, the guys on the right will.
And it's the most used view. And students who are doing better, of course, think that it's fine to do it. We have in this data collection also measured some emotions like anxiety and
I'm going to
measurement.
show you that.
We don't have it in this data collection. But one thing we did was, because we're most concerned with the students that are not doing well at all, we did deal with that by taking the lower grades, and Stephanie will talk about binning the low grades so no one specifically stands out.
Yeah, we used to show the complete distribution all the way down the line, and it would show you like that there was one student here and two students here and one student here, and you worry about, especially in a smaller class, you look at that and you might think to yourself, oh, I know exactly who that is, and look how badly they're doing. So for student privacy, we've done this binning strategy, which takes at least the 5 lowest students and just puts them in one bin and said, these students will all have a 67 or below. If you're in that bin and you have show my grade, it will show you where you are, but it doesn't show you, yeah, there's one person worse than you and 2 people who are only slightly better than you. And this could be higher, like if these bins had, you know, more than 5 people in it, but they were all below this cutoff. So we started that this fall, and our solution before that was we simply didn't turn this view on for courses that were under 20 or 25. And we're still letting, for small courses, we're letting instructors decide whether this binning makes them feel confident about that, because there's, again, no empirical evidence about this or guidelines for this. So, but we're really, pretty happy with this binning strategy. Yes?
So overall, for all these different views, I guess my question is, are you doing or planning to do an experiment, randomized experiment?
No.
Right?
I mean, maybe someday. Let me show you what we're doing with the data. So let's get to this question. We have research questions. If we build it, will they come? It's the top one, of course. Which views do they like? Are there differences in how students are using the dashboard? And do those differences have anything to do with performance or their self-regulation skills in general? So let's get to some data. I can show you what we have. I'm going to tell you about the data that we have analyzed most to date, which is our data from last winter, from the 10 classes that we used last winter, which is over 860 students, had the opportunity to use this. And what we have for measures are their performance data, so what their cumulative GPA is before they came to this course. So we know in general, you know, are they strong students or not quite as strong students? And of course their performance data for the course. We have survey data. We send them a survey right after we show them the demo to kind of get some usability. How much do you think you're going to like this? Do you understand this? Which views do you think you'll use? And then we have a longer survey that we send out at the end of the term that asks those same questions, but also a number of other questions, of which will be clear when I show you some more results. So that's the data that we have from winter and continue to have for the classes we're doing now. So the first one is, okay, so if you build it, just over half of them will come. We turn it on for everybody, we demo it for people. Whether they use it or not, of course, is completely up to them. Over half the students at least clicked on it and went there once, and most of these students went there more than once. So that gave us a sample size of 449 students. Now, part of the reason we don't necessarily need a randomized controlled trial is because we know everything about the users and we know everything about the non-users. So we can also sort of say, who are the users? how are they different from the non-users? I know it's not the gold standard. We may in fact be doing some randomized controlled trials, but again, we have the whole population. The whole point of randomized controlled trials is when you can't have the whole population. And you wanna make sure you're not sampling specifically. I'm not gonna have that argument with you. We can talk about it later if you like. And of those people who used it, just under half of them filled out our survey. So hooray, we know something about their opinions, although again, we know everything else about all the students, whether they filled out the survey or not, because it's in our student information system, right? Okay, so
Stephanie,
yes.
I'm presuming you've got a graph that 52% did it once.
Yeah.
I'd like to see 2, 3, 4, 5, how many?
Yeah, I would too.
Because it's gonna fall off pretty exponentially,
Yeah.
probably.
That's a good, yeah, I don't have that graph for you today, but I will have that graph. One of the things we wanted to know was achievement, right? So the most clear-cut way to do that, I think, was to divide the students into quartiles by their GPA, their cumulative GPA. And you can see, like, this is the Great Michigan difference. People laugh about this. Okay, so the high performers, 3.7 to 4.2, right? Mid-high are still, these are still B plus to B plus and B to just not quite B plus, and then everybody else. But again, you divide them into quartiles, so you have these equal groups. So we can call them high, mid-low, and low performers. We also looked for those who filled out the survey at their scores on our questionnaire items that rated their self-regulation behavior, their self-reported self-regulation behavior. And based on those scores, created 3 clusters of users: the high self-regulators, the medium self-regulators, and the low. But you'll note here that the medium self-regulators is the largest group. There are some issues with self-report data. Students tend to underestimate how much self-regulation they do. But so we think there are probably more high self-regulators, especially here at Michigan, than this shows. But anyway, we use these clusters to identify students to look at the relationship between their use and their self-reported self-regulation scores. Okay, so then what do we do for use? We did a sequence analysis on how they use the dashboard. So a student had a line of data for every log click on the dashboard, right? And then we called them sessions. We looked at this 10-minute max, because the average length was about 5. And then if there was more than 10 minutes between one time they were at the dashboard and the next time, we called that a new session. So what we have here, and this little terminology is going to help you interpret the next few graphs, but if they did this event 1, so they clicked on the files and then they went to the assignments all within this 10-minute period, it looks like this. If they clicked on the files and then looked at events and then went away for more than 10 minutes and the next time they came back they looked at the grade distribution view, we use this notation system for that. So what were students doing? Here's the top 10 patterns for how students use the dashboard. And the first one is, we replicated everybody else's dashboard study where there was a grade distribution view. Almost every single student who used the dashboard went and did a single, they went and they looked at grades. Or they went and looked at the files and assignments. The fourth one is they looked at the files, they went away and they came back and looked at the files again within 10 minutes. So what we think is going on here is they saw something they missed, they went and looked at it, they came back to check to see what else they might have missed. And so when you see file, that's where they did this in a 10-minute period. This one, by contrast, is they looked at files, they went away for more than 10 minutes, so maybe they actually went and actually read the thing, and then they came back again to the files to check for the next one. And here's file, so they were just clicking back and forth, assignment, and then check grades, files, check grades, looked at grades, went to the files. looked at grades and went to assignments. So even though grades is involved a lot, actually if you add up these file views, they're hitting the file views a fair amount, making use of that view. And in particular, making use of it in sequences that suggest that they're going to it, doing something, and then coming back and checking it again. So that's just aggregate across all the users, what were the 10 most common patterns. Now, were there differences by academic achievements? I told you we divided them by quartiles. These are probably too small to read. These